Hey guys, it's Kaz here, and today I'm doing my February wrap up. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I've got 2 mints in my mouth and it feels really weird because I've pushed them to the bottom. Anyway, I'm just gonna get started. I don't know why I find this so amusing. It just feels really weird. Me from the not too distant future. So apparently we're 2 months in and I've already forgotten that I'm doing my stats in this video. So quickly, I read 12 books, which was 2,855 pages. My star ratings, I had one book that was 2.5, 2 books that were 3, 1 book that was 3.5, 7 that were 4, and 1 that was 5 stars. So all in all, a good month. I read no middle grade or children's books, but I did read 8 young adults, 3 new adults, and 1 adult book. All of them were physical, which is good because I'm trying to get my physical TBR down. 5 books had white authors, 5 had BIPOC authors, and 2 had both. And then last but not least, I read 4 books that were by males, 6 by females, and 2 by multiple. But side note, when I put them in multiple, it has to be multiple but more than one gender. For example, some of the books I read here were by multiple people, but both of them were female, so then I put it in female. Just a bit of facts for the fact fans. Back to me from the past. So first of all, in February, I read Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. Yes, finally, I read it and it was really good. 5 stars, loved it, amazing, brilliant. As soon as I started reading the book, there's like a prologue, I think it is, and just the writing, I just freaking love Maggie Stiefvater's writing. I was there and I was just invested instantly. It's just so good and so lovely. And the story is really fun. When we first heard about this, everyone was like, oh, Ronan's trilogy, oh, Ronan's trilogy. But it follows a bunch of different characters. It's not just Ronan as well. It's all 3 of the Lynch brothers. And then we have other characters that are new and coming in. And I love them all. And this is a great story. And I'm kind of glad that I waited to read it because I've got the second one pre-ordered and it's not too long away. So it's a good thing, really. So in here we find out more about the whole dreaming thing. Other people that do it, people that know about it and don't want it to happen, all the weird, cool, weird stuff. I don't even know how to explain it because I don't know what is spoilers, what isn't spoilers, but it's just really good. I also really like the fact that for most of this book, Adam is off at college because I didn't want it to be a fan service like, oh look, Adam and Ronan, look how cute they are. I'm glad that Maggie didn't do that and just fan service everyone. She made the story that she wanted to make and that was not a main part of it. He's there, he's doing his thing, he's at college, he's living his life, and I liked that. Also, finding out more about the other Lynch brothers, I just love them all. I can see why people are a fan of Declan now, because on Twitter and stuff I would see people talking about Declan and really liking him, and I didn't dislike him from the Raven Cycle, I just didn't know him very well, and in here you find out more about him and who he is and why he acts how he acts, and I just love it, and I love him, and I love this story, and I love Maggie Stiefvater's writing style, and yeah, it's just really good. Hennessy, I love Hennessy as well, just throwing it out there. It's just such an interesting story. And also, this is weaved like the Raven Cycle is, you know, when there'll be a weird bit of character and we don't know who they are and it's just interdispersed throughout the book, and then towards the end it all comes together and it makes sense and it means stuff, and I just love the way that Maggie Stiefvater can weave a story. And you can tell that this is after the Raven Cycle because I feel like it's even more mature and done even better, and the way it's put together is just perfection. Anyway, let's just talk about a different book. The next 6 things I did already talk about in my small book vlogjet 2, so check that out if you want to. It's full of me talking about books, and there's cats, and there's snow, and there's fun stuff, so check that out. But I read Dark Feather by Andrew Demkak. This is the 3rd book in the Elusive Spark series, what I thought was a trilogy, but then when I finished I found out it's actually got 4 books, and the 4th book, after 2 years of this being out, is not even a Goodreads page, so who knows if it's ever going to happen, who knows if the story is ever going to get wrapped up. But it's a sci-fi story about kids with powers, and then it gets really sci-fi. There's aliens, there's weird technology, there's government officials being naughty, and in here it's probably my least favourite. I don't know why I said probably. It's definitely my least favourite of the 3 books. I feel like it goes down in quality, which is unfortunate. The first book was really cool. It had like an X-Men vibe. The second book was where the sort of more sci-fi alien-y stuff came in more. And I was like, alright then, I can see what you're trying to do, but it's not as good. This one just felt like there was a lot of filler, even though it's, what, 160 pages or something crazy like that. It felt like there was a lot of filler, there was a lot of just standing around doing nothing. There was a weird romance between one of the characters and a Yeti boy. And, yeah. And the ending is definitely a big old cliffhanger, so the fact that the last book doesn't even exist, not the best, but you know, hopefully it exists at some point, and then I'll read it, and hopefully it gets a bit better, instead of just going down, down, down. Then I read Runaways Volume 5, Escape to New York. This is a fun one. Runaways in general is just really fun. It's probably a young YA, I would say. Like high middle grade young YA, and it's about a bunch of characters who find out that their parents are supervillains. That's what happens in the first book anyway, and by volume 5 a bunch of stuff's happened. Generally there's sort of little one-shots. There'll be different people from the Marvel universe jumping in and they'll be helping them out, or they'll be doing stuff. In previous volumes there've been the Avengers have hung out, and then we've had Spider-Man in here and the Avengers and Cloak and Dagger, all sorts of people. So if you know Marvel, then it's kind of like a big old jumble of everyone jumping in, but in a younger setting. And yeah, I enjoyed it. One character did go off on a mission on their own, and I really hope that that isn't just them leaving the cast and then never coming back, because I feel like that would have been a little bit of a cop-out. But yeah, hopefully in the next volume, or even one after that, there's 10 altogether. Hopefully in a volume up and coming, that character will come back and we'll find out what happened, and there'll be like a little backstory on that. That'll be fun. Anyway, let me show you the artwork, because that's what I always do when I'm showing comics. There we go, that's the sort of artwork in here. And then the other 4 books I talked about in that small book project is book 4 to 7 of The Demon Diary, which is the end of that series. So yeah, I read all 4 of these. This is a fun series. It's really weird and silly, especially towards the beginning. It's kind of really jovial, and it's not very heavy on the like the story arc. It's just characters being silly. Basically, Demon Diary, the Demon Lord dies, and then a new Demon Lord comes, and the new Demon Lord is just a young boy who was just really nice and not very evil, and then his mentor is just really done with it and is just trying to make him evil and stuff, but it's just really nice and naive and sweet and stuff. But in here, definitely towards the last sort of 3 volumes, I would say, the storyline definitely picks up. You find out why things happen, what's going on, there's battles, there's fun stuff. I also like the fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously. For example, at one point, one of the characters is talking to another character and they're like, no, this did happen, look, and then they show that character a previous volume of this and be like, look, it happened on that panel. And I just like that, like, fourth wall breaking. It's just really fun and silly, and then there'll be chibi moments where the characters are just having fun and being silly. But yeah, the storyline definitely picks up, and it's just, it's a fun series. And also the fact that there's only 7 volumes is good, because a lot of manga goes on for fucking ages, you know what I mean? So it's nice, it's just a little compact storyline, and I enjoy all the characters. I'll show you some of the artwork, because you know that's what I do. So this is what it looks like inside. After that I read Scooby Apocalypse Volume 3. This one is definitely the best of the series so far. I feel like it's been picking up. The first 2 volumes were very repetitive, and basically in here it's a Scooby-Doo gang, but something happened, like this thing was released, and then people have actually turned into real monsters, so they're trying to escape all these real actual monsters that are gonna kill everybody and stuff like that. And in the first volume there was a lot of, oh, this is your fault, no it isn't, this is your fault, no it isn't, and it was just over and over again really repetitive. And the second volume, it sort of calmed down a little bit, but it was still quite repetitive and a bit not interesting. This volume is definitely the most interesting I've read so far, which is a good sign. It means it's picking up. The ending shows that something is definitely going to be changing in the 4th volume. There's 6 altogether. So it's giving me a little bit of The Walking Dead vibes at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see how that is done. But on the other hand, for some reason, this series just takes a really long time for me to read. It's just, right, let me just show you. For some reason, it just has so many words on the page. I know that makes no sense because most of the page is actually pictures. But if you read a lot of comics, you will know that this is a lot of speech bubbles, and it just feels like it takes ages to read, even though, like, in reality this is not a lot of words, but it is when you're reading a graphic novel. So this took me a few days. I kept putting it down because I was just like, oh, this is too much, I can't bother. But even saying that, it is the best volume so far, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. Also in this one, this random squirrel dude has popped up. I don't really know much about Scooby-Doo, SARS, not really a fan of it, which is quite funny because I'm reading this. But there's this random little offshoot storyline that's not a part of this yet, which I feel like it probably will be in the future, otherwise it'll be weird, where there's this squirrel detective, and it just makes no sense whatsoever because he's just a detective with loads of humans and they just don't say anything about it, which is fine, but I just kind of don't get it yet. And also, I don't mind it when comics throw in like a little side plot of something really silly and different. For example, Chew obviously has Poyo in it, and sometimes it throws to Poyo just fighting stuff and killing stuff, which is really fun and cool because the story is good enough that it's fun to have a little side plot and then you jump back in the story because you're really excited. Whereas this, I feel like the story isn't gripping enough to be able to have time to nip off to somebody else and do something else. But like I said, it's definitely getting better, so hopefully the fourth one is even better. We're probably about halfway through, so let's just throw on over to some of the sponsors, come back. I'm chatting a lot of shit, so you probably need a little breathing space. So here's a message from one of our sponsors. Hi. Do you want to watch the new video? Oh, she says she's already seen it. She's the #1 fan. She's already seen it. What about you? Are you going to watch it? So after that, I read In Mike We Trust by P.E. Ryan. This one is really weird because I feel like it's such a strange story, but it's not really. Right, basically this is about that boy Garth, who's just living his life, and then his uncle comes to town, and his uncle's a really dodgy dealer. He's a bit of a scammer. He's always gambling, or trying to scam people, or he does these charity things but are not really charity. He's just trying to get the money off them. And most of the story is just Garth sort of being with his uncle and getting involved in these dodgy dealings. But also on the flip side, it's a lot about family. Obviously it's his uncle, but his father died quite a few years previously, and his uncle is his father's twin brother, so there's a lot of that sort of, maybe the reason that he's so connected to his uncle and lets him get away with all this dodgy stuff is because he looks exactly like his dad. And then also it's about Garth and his mother's interaction because her husband died, she's very, very, very protective over Garth, so she doesn't really let him have much autonomy. For example, he came out to her and she was just like, no, unlucky, you're not allowed to be gay until you're 18 because I need to protect you and bad stuff might happen, so never talk to me about it again, kind of thing. So it's also about his sexuality and him wanting to explore that and wanting to see and learn about being gay, but also not being allowed by his mum because she's so overprotective that it's a negative thing. And in here, he goes to a gay bookshop slash films, just has stuff, a gay store. And he picks up Beautiful Thing, and then he watches Beautiful Thing, and it made me really want to rewatch Beautiful Thing because that is a great film. So yes, I really need to rewatch that at some point. But he picks that up and some books, and he's trying to like learn more about himself, I would say, but secretly from his mum. So there's this whole him keeping secrets about his sexuality, but not really because she knows, but she told him not to tell him again. And it's also him about keeping secrets about these dodgy things that he's doing with his uncle and taking money off people in not a very good way. And then it's about his family, and he's got friends and maybe a potential love interest. So there's a lot going on in here, but also not really, because it feels like the story is very grounded. It's just about him going out with his uncle, getting money off people in a scammy way, but like mixed up into that there's all these different things. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was different. Next up, I read Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. This one, first of all, let me just throw it out there. I know that people have a lot of problems with this because of the way that disability is perceived in here. For me personally, I enjoyed it because what I read it as and took it as is just a fun, fluffy, contemporary romance. If you take it as that, you'll probably enjoy it. It's like, yeah, these two characters are being cute with each other. If you take it as genuine, like real disability rep and real disability experience, you're probably going to hate it because it's just not. So it depends on how you want to read it and whichever way is right for you. But I personally enjoyed it just because of the way that I took it. It was cute, it was fluffy. I enjoyed both of the characters, the love interests. And I like the way it was written. I didn't know it was sort of multimedia, mixed media type of thing. There's, hello, focus. There's full words, but there's also pictures. Oh, it's got a bookmark in. And there's charts and stuff like that. So I enjoyed the reading experience, and I did feel the ending was very rushed, and it did feel like it came a little bit out of left field, but also at the same time I could see why it did that, so that it could be this fluffy, happy, cute romance thing, because if it didn't do that, then it wouldn't have been able to be that. And it was a weird mix. I also feel like the ending is very, very similar to The Sun Is Also a Star, which is also by Nicola Yoon. She also really like these really quick endings where the open endings, and then like in the last chapter the characters sort of meet again-ish. Yeah, it very much reminded me of that one. But this is about a girl who has been inside her home all her life because she has this really rare disease where she's pretty much allergic to everything. And then after I think she's just turned 18 and these new family moves in across the street, and then she strikes up this friendship and then relationship with the boy next door. Or across the road, probably, not next door. But anyway, it's about that, and like I said, I thought both the characters were cute. I liked her nurse slash friend, Carla. I thought she was a really interesting character, and she had this little speech about when she came over from Mexico and how she had to just accept that this thing is really scary and might be bad, but it also is better than the alternative kind of thing. And yeah, I thought it was nice. I thought it was cute. It's not proper disability rep. It's not true to life. Don't take it like that. Take it with a pinch of salt. Maybe you'll enjoy it. But if you don't want to take it with a pinch of salt and you want to say this isn't disability rep, therefore it's bad, then that is totally, totally valid and acceptable, and do it. Oh, also, I like the fact that it talked a little bit about domestic violence as well, but in a sort of stepped back way. So the family over the road that she's watching, obviously she's in the house all the time, so she sees lots of stuff. So she sees from a third person perspective of like a bad family life. So it's not right in your face in the book, but it's definitely something that is talked about. So I like the fact that they talked about that in here a little bit from an outside perspective, seeing it rather than being a part of it kind of thing. So yeah, after that I finally read Robin and Ruby by K.M. Solerlein. This has been on so many TBRs over like the past couple of years, so I thought, you know what, I'm putting it on this TBR and it's gonna bloody get read, thank you very much. And I did finally read it. This is a sequel to The World of Normal Boys. It came out 10 years after, so it's quite a long way away, and it's about the characters maybe 6 or 7 years after that first book. So in The World of Normal Boys it follows Robin. He's 13/14 and it's all about his sexual awakening, but also a lot of family things. That one's set in the 80s. His brother gets hurt in an accident and then dies, so there was a lot about grief and family and all that mixed in with him like figuring out that he likes boys and all that sort of stuff. And then this one, like I say, 6 or 7 years later, he's 20 now, at college, and it follows him, but it also follows his younger sister Ruby. And it's pretty much takes place over one weekend. We do have a little bit before, just to give you a little backstory, like a few days before. But most of the story takes place over this weekend. And I really like the way that this talks about sexuality, because obviously he's talking about Robin. He's an openly gay man. It's the mid-80s, so obviously AIDS, HIV, very scary. He's very scared of that thing happening. Like, since it was a thing that he knew about, he's always been careful, but in the back of his mind he's like, but I've had all these sexual experiences in the past, what if they jump up on me? Even though he's taken like 3 or 4 tests and they've all come back negative, he's still very much got that worry in the back of his head okay, but maybe it's just dormant and it's going to happen. So for him, a lot of it is to do with obviously that side of sexuality, being gay in the 80s, this deadly disease that's killing off gay men, and him being very promiscuous while he was younger. He does have a boyfriend, but right at the beginning they split up, and it's because of this previous promiscuity. That's not a word, but we'll say it is. So it's him dealing with that. And also on his end of the stuff, there is talk of racism as well, which is very interesting. I didn't know was going to happen because his best friend and roommate is a gay black man. They both live in a predominantly black area, and obviously it talks about racism and microaggressions and being gay and black. And because the book's told from Robin's perspective, we obviously see that firsthand as him not understanding stuff. He'll be like, oh no, that's not that, that's that. But obviously George knows that no, it's because I'm black, that's why that's happening. So I very much appreciate that, because I didn't know that was going to be a thing. And then on the flip side of that, with Ruby, the sexuality is very much the opposite. So when she was younger, maybe 16, she had her first sexual experience. She didn't like it, the boy was very rough. So since then, she's just never had sex, and the boyfriend that she's been with for over a year thinks she's a virgin. Everyone thinks she's a virgin. And her side of the story is very much about sexuality and about people feeling like they have a valid reason to have a voice and opinion on what you choose to do. Like, every character she meets always mentions the fact that she's a virgin and why hasn't she had sex. So I liked the juxtaposition between these two different characters. They're both talking about sexuality, but in a very different way. The weekend is set because Ruby goes on a trip with a boyfriend. She's with all of his friends, not her own friends. She wants to split up with him because she doesn't really like him, and all of his friends was talking about, oh, why haven't you had sex with him? Why are you a virgin? Oh, I don't believe you're a virgin. And it's like, okay, but why does it matter? Kind of thing. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't need to mean anything. It's nobody else's business, but everybody has an opinion. And then she meets a guy that she used to know a few years ago, and then she goes on like an adventure. She leaves the party, she meets these other people, she goes and have all these adventures. But while she's having that adventure, because it's the mid-80s, nobody knows where she is, so everyone's all like, oh my days, what's happened to her, where is she? And that's where the stories intertwine. So Robin is going to this place to try and figure out what's happened, where his sister is. Everybody's wondering and scared and worried. And yeah, that's where it all comes together, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it was as good as The World of Normal Boys in terms of being poignant, and it wasn't as introspective, but I did enjoy the book for what it was. Maybe the fact that it's been a few years since I read The World of Normal Boys is good as well, because I haven't got a very solid character of either of these people. So if they've changed in any way or moulded into different people as adults, then I can't really tell because it's been a few years, so yeah. But anyway, I really enjoyed this book. It was interesting. I didn't know what it was about when I went in. I just got it because it was a sequel to a book I really liked, so I didn't know it was going to be all about sexuality and family. And oh, also this same weekend is the anniversary of their brother's death, so that's why they're meant to meet up, and then she's gone AWOL. It would have been his 18th birthday, so there's all that. And the family aspect as well. Their parents split up quite a few years ago, and there's a lot of animosity there. Yeah, it's a lot to do with family and relationships and sexuality and life, and it was good. I'll shut up. I feel like I've been chatting shit for ages. And then last but not least, I read Evil by Subnet, Barbusa and Jean-Claude Bragard. This is a book based on a Channel 4 program called Evil. It was written in 1988, so the program probably came out quite a while ago too. And yeah, it's all just about the concept of evil, what it means, how people perceive it. Should it be used as a word to describe people or things or actions or stuff? And to be fair, the middle bit was quite interesting. I enjoyed the middle bit when it talked about actual things and real people, but the beginning and the end were so boring. It took me so long to get through. I started it on the 1st of February. I decided I'd read it a bit a day to get through it, and then like 3/4 of this I just read on the last day of February because I had to get it finished because it was a lot. So the first bit that got me really bored and was really tedious was there was just so much in-depth analysis of poems from the 1600s, and I was like, I don't care. You don't have to go into it this deep. There'd be a whole page of a poem, and then the next like 3 pages would be taking each sentence of that and dissecting it and saying this is what they meant by this, and I was like, I don't care, man, just talk about real stuff. And then the ending was a lot to do with religion, but Christianity specifically, and 2 reasons it was annoying me. First was because it was just about Christianity and there are loads of religions, and they talk about Hinduism for like half a page, and then there'll be 10 pages about Christianity and their concept of evil. So in that sense it annoyed me because it was just focusing on one. It also annoyed me because it went too in depth. Like the poetry, they were just throwing out stories and verses and stuff that St. Augustine talked about ages ago, and I was like, I don't care. It just felt like they went too in depth with that, when I wanted to hear about the concept of evil in terms of reality, not in terms of poems or religion or things that you think people meant, even though they said it 300 years ago, so how do you know that's what they meant? You're just dissecting it. It felt like an English essay where you have to overly dissect something, and it was boring to read. So yeah, those are the bits that I didn't like. But the middle bit I thought was really interesting, actually, when it went into like actual things. You can definitely tell it's of its time in terms of the cases that it talked about. It talked about like the Yorkshire Rippers and it talked about Dennis Nielsen, but I feel like if it was written more recently, you would have heard about other things, like the James Bulger case would probably have been in here, talking about kids and evil. I feel like that would have been the thing. Or like Holly and Jessica, because it's from England, I'm picking out English things. Their murder, I feel, is very prominent in the press, and they would have talked about that. So in that way you can tell the age. Also, they say multiple murderer instead of serial killer, which I thought was quite interesting, because serial killer was a thing in the 80s, but just not as prominent as now. But yeah, I enjoyed the different parts of the real life they talked about. So as I said, they talked about actual murders and how that person is perceived. Are they evil? Are their actions evil? Can they be called evil? Is it psychological, nature, nurture, all that? They also talked about specific things, like they talked about the Vietnam War, and especially this one specific village that didn't have any enemies in, and they just massacred the whole village, and it's all about taking orders and how that is a thing, like, oh, we were just doing orders, they told us to go and kill all these civilians, so we did, kind of thing. And then obviously World War II, Nazi Germany, about taking orders and killing people, and even though you know it's wrong, can you be called evil if the reason you're doing the evil is because somebody and higher up in power has told you to do it and you feel like you have to do it? There's all that sort of stuff. Diffusion of responsibility, there's a lot of us, so if we all do the bad thing, can one of us be called evil individually, or are we evil as a group? And also Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bombs were dropped, and it talks about in here how they were trying to justify it by saying that if we didn't drop the bombs, then a war would have happened and even more people would have died, so justifiably it is the lesser of two evils because only this amount of people died instead of this amount of people died. So in that sense it was really interesting trying to see how people sort of in their own heads decide what is and isn't evil, how dropping bombs on Germany even after they've decided that they're probably going to win in places with civilians, how they accepted that in their own mind. And then going back to the murders of people, how you can go around killing loads of kids and then people will call you evil. And then it talks about this whole thing like, if somebody does an evil act or an act that you would say is evil, and then you say, oh, they should have the death penalty, they should be killed, what they did was so bad, are you as evil as that person because you want death? And it's a weird thing like that. It also talked about forgiveness and how a victim should be able to forgive a perpetrator, but somebody else can't forgive somebody for something that didn't happen to them. So it gives an example of a mother and a child. If the child gets murdered and then the mother forgives the killer, then they shouldn't be allowed to because they don't know whether the child would have forgiven them. So yeah, it goes into a lot of things. It's really heavy, and it took me quite a while to read. Well, I say that, I read most of it in a day. But even though it doesn't seem big, just the way it's written was very heavy, and it took quite a while to read it, just to get it around my head. There are pictures and stuff in here as well. Some of them quite harrowing. There's like literally pictures of dead people from massacres and stuff. So there's that sort of thing. But yeah, I find it really interesting. There was this one part towards the end where they were talking about Germany again, and it was just so harrowing. It's this report from, what's the word? I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, towards the end there's the report, transcripts of the Nuremberg trials, that's the one. And it's just a section this big, just this bit here. But it's basically about a Polish guard explaining how at the height of Nazi Germany, when the gas chambers were so full, they would literally just take children and throw them over the top over the heads of adults to pack it up even more, put more of them in the chambers. And it said that they would kill the women with the children because they didn't want them being sad and causing a fuss. So if the kid's going to go, they're going to be sad, so we'll kill them as well because the kid can't do labour, so get them dead. And then it said that they would throw kids just straight into the furnaces when there wasn't enough space for the gas chambers. And then the prosecutor says, how am I to understand this? Did they throw them into the fire alive or did they kill them first? And then they said they threw them in alive, their screams could be heard at the camp. And then the prosecutor asked why, and they said, it's difficult to say. We don't know whether they wanted to economise on gas or if it was because there was not enough room in the gas chambers. And just the way that somebody's talking about this, so just normal, just explaining, oh yeah, this is how we did it, this is what happened. It's just such a harrowing and weird disconnect from the way that somebody's talking about this and what they're saying. That was probably the most poignant bit of this whole book. It was right towards the end. And I'm glad that was there, because towards the end I was like, this is getting really tedious now. So I'm glad that they had a bit again that made me think, right, this is talking about some interesting stuff and some important stuff. So we just have to wade through all the boring shit about poetry and religion that I don't care about. So yeah, it was a mixed bag. But ultimately, I'm glad I finally read it. I've had this for freaking ages. Not since 1988, but quite a few years. I wasn't alive then. But anyway, that was the last thing I read in February. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, if any sound interesting, any thoughts, any opinions, any words. Say the words, I'll reply. Good times. And if this is your first video by me and you enjoy it, then please check out some of the others. And if you continue to enjoy, then please subscribe, that'd be awesome. Anyway guys, I'll see you in a few days with another video. Bye.
Hey bunny, oh you're so lovely.